Petty Pest Control, in an effort to offer more value for their services and warranties, or bring forth the OP method in the form of CenterCon interior inspections, quality service inspections, and post-settlement inspections. While it is a gold mine to a degree, and could appear to be a Trojan horse strategy, it is actually a value-added benefit to the customer and the company. In a sense, it is a total win if it is done correctly. To perform this correctly, it is necessary you are trained to identify issues in the home during an inspection that are legitimate and could prove harmful to the structure or the occupants of the structural. As professional inspectors, you have a responsibility and obligation to not only provide great inspections but to point out issues within the home that could cause potential damage. The OP stands for Opportunity Probe. While the title may sound nefarious, it is actually a protective measure provided by the company for the consumer. History has shown that during regular annual inspections, inspectors often have tunnel vision, focusing only on the target warranty pest. They tend to overlook serious issues like fungi, wildlife infestations, and contamination. This not only does a disservice to the customer, but also to the company. Customers expect professional practices that prioritize the structure and their well-being, even if it means paying for services outside their warranty. Looking at the stats from the last month on the OP CenterCon interior inspection, it became clear that while you all are 5-star lead inspectors, you are less than a 10 on opportunity probes. The good news is you still produced almost $20,000 off them. Think what you could do if you were trained for these. When we broke down the inspections and took a deep dive, the pictures on some of the accounts revealed the problem. While there is no doubt our inspection team is one of the best in the country, the photos showed we were either misidentifying wood-boring insects or not fully understanding a real threat to the structure, which is wood-destroying fungi. This was an exciting observation. Now we can elevate this 5-star team with a little training. Again, there seems to be some confusion about wood borers, specifically the two reinfesting wood borers we typically deal with, the old house wood borer and the powder post beetle. Actually, they are easy to distinguish because their exit holes are not similar. Old house wood borer exit holes are oblong, similar to the shape of your fingernail on your little finger. Another tip with old house wood borer is that the wood will often show a bulge instead of an exit hole. However, if you tap the bulge by probing it, it will burst open and a fine dust will come out. Powder post beetle exit holes look like Jack the Ripper went nuts with an ice pick. Small ice pick type holes, usually with white baby powder falling out. Hence the name, powder post beetle.
So, how do you treat this? Disodium octaborate tetrahydrate is the active ingredient in Timbor. With wood borers, Timbor kills them by making the wood toxic through a two-step process. It acts as a slow-acting stomach poison that accumulates in the insect system as it eats the wood. It can also act as a contact poison. One note to mention is that it cannot be applied to painted, stained, or sealed wood because it is a moisture-seeking agent, and if the wood is sealed, it will not penetrate or work.
When wood borers ingest the borate compounds, it prevents the insect from metabolizing the food. Timber can be applied to the wood as a liquid, dust, or foam. When the insect tunnels through or eats the treated area, it ingests the product, killing the larva inside the wood. Back in the days, these conditions required full house fumigations, but Timber has provided the industry with a better, more flexible tool. However, we will emphasize that it can only be applied to raw wood, not paint or stain. So now we have discussed the issues with wood borers, which I hope we have clarified in terms of proper identification and how those conditions are treated. The elephant in the room that we are just now exposing is fungal growth on wood. Fungi, we do not use the word mold, is a living organism that, under proper conditions like we find in attics and crawl spaces, can grow and feed on wood due to moisture content in the wood. Wood is a microcosm of tubular fibers which wick up moisture if exposed. At a certain point, they attract fungal spores which set up on the wood and begin to grow, feeding on elements of the wood to survive. Fungi can be found in almost every home to some extent. Not knowing the potential harm it can do, it seems we have overlooked it on many inspections where we could have alerted the homeowner. So let's get more familiar with this issue. We received this photo from one of the inspectors asking what these white moldy spots were. This was actually good news because it alerted us to the potential for identification training. These are early examples of fungi in their initial stages. The other photos show attics and crawl spaces with more advanced levels of infestation. At this level, you can already see damages developing from the fungal. I bet some of you are saying, damn, I see this all the time while I am inspecting our homes. Well, that's the reason for training. Now you know. But what to do with what you know is critical for you and the homeowner. Let's start by acknowledging that mildew is not just a harmless term. In fact, mildew is a form of fungal growth. Fungi thrive in damp crawl spaces and release spores that travel into your living space. Breathing in their spores can cause persistent coughing or wheezing, allergy flare-ups, sinus irritation, headaches, and fatigue. For children, seniors, or anyone with asthma, fungal exposure can be especially harmful. Simply put, what happens beneath your floors or in the attic above your head doesn't stay there. It can affect the very air. We now understand that wood is composed of tubular fibers that absorb moisture. It also contains lignin and carbohydrates. Fungi that feed on what are known as wood decay fungi or saprophytic fungi, including types like brown rot, white rot, and soft rot. Fungal growth on wood occurs as they produce hyphae stems that detect chemicals released from the wood, which they consider a food source. They grow toward that source and penetrate the wood, consuming its components, making them just as destructive as termites. If you shine your flashlight down the wood beam, you will notice small bumps like fuzz. That is the fungi. If you could dry the wood out, it would starve the fungal growth. However, wood does not release moisture without a drying agent. In crawl spaces and attics, it is nearly impossible to dry the wood, so it must be treated to resolve the problem. Factors influencing decay. Moisture. White rot requires moisture to function. Wood decay caused by fungi occurs when the moisture content stays above 20%. Ventilation. Poor airflow can trap moisture, creating an ideal environment for fungus to grow and spread. Temperature. Appropriate temperatures are needed for spores to germinate and for the fungus to develop and spread. 50 to 90 degrees. So, what tool do you need to inspect and diagnose fungal issues in attics and crawl spaces? How about a moisture meter? How many crawl spaces have you seen like this, or even attics? Or how about when the insulation is installed upside down? This traps moisture inside, creating worse conditions. So, what is the cure, doctor? It's the same product we use for the wood bore treatment. Timbor. The active ingredient is disodium octaborate tetrahydrate, a borate mineral salt. In this case, Timbor can act as a contact poison for fungi. It prevents them from digesting their food, which leads to their death. Penetration. When applied as a liquid, the borate solution soaks into the wood. Diffusion. The borate becomes part of the wood through diffusion, and as the wood's moisture content changes, the borate is drawn deeper into the fibers. Timbor does not break down over time, so remains active in the wood for years, providing long-lasting protection against decay fungi and wood-destroying insects. So, do you still think our OP inspections are basically Trojan horse concepts? Or do you see yourself as a valuable asset to the homeowner, providing professional inspections and advice for the health of not only the home but also the families that live in those homes? I think you will find more opportunities to help the client, the company, and yourself. Education is a win-win for everyone.